The last week or so, it's been a little bit hectic. I've just watched a lot of my friends. They're just struggling so hard, and it's all doing with the same thing. And even the girls that I mentor, like, they're calling me and texting me, and it's all about how God is silent right now, and where is God, and in this place of frustration, where do they find their hope? Where do they put their faith, right? And I think a lot of times when it comes to our friends going through really hard situations or dealing with grief or pain or anything that has to do with that, our first instinct is wanting to help, which is great, which is so good. But I also think that our first instinct is to give our opinion. And as I was having these conversations and people are looking at me and going, help, like, tell me how to get out of this, and all that I could say is look to Jesus. I've realized, as I've walked through grief, as I've walked through pain, as I've walked through desert seasons where God is really quiet and you're sitting there and you're going, where are you, God? I think I just tried to explain it to them in this way of, you know what? I don't have a perfect solution of how you get out of the desert or how you get out of grief or how you get out of pain. All that I know to do is go to him with everything. And they all kind of sat there and they were like, what do you mean with everything? Like, I don't have anything to give. And I said, yeah, but you have anger, you have pain, you're hurting. Are you going to go to him with those things? Are you going to tell him about why you're hurting? Are you going to talk to him about those things? And they all kind of looked at me and were like, well, I don't know. And I really challenged them in this, that a place of religion in our hearts can be the places where we don't tell God how we honestly feel. Like, God doesn't know how we honestly feel. And I don't think we realize it's actually religious, but it is, because what we're actually doing is going, I can't tell God this. Like, he'll think of me as less than, and we have to keep this relationship perfect, but God isn't looking for perfection in our relationship with him. He's just looking for really honest and authentic people. He's not looking for perfection. If you look through the Bible, you have so many imperfect people that God uses. People that sin, people that fall short, and God goes, yes, I will still love you. Yes, I will still use you. And you watch them in the midst of really hard times. You watch David literally asking God, where is he? You literally have those moments. And so I think a lot of times where religion kind of rears its head is in these moments where we're in pain. We don't want to go to God. We don't want to talk to God. And I would say this, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to sit in those moments where you're not sure, like, where are you, God? And you're going, I'm confused, I'm hurt, I'm lonely, and you're not here. I know how hard that is. And I know that this is the one thing that I can teach you, is that in the midst of pain and grief, when I was crying all of those things, all that I could do was bring God my tears, but it was enough for him. And it was beautiful to him. And I think a lot of times we want to bring God an offering, but I think we don't understand that to God we're the offering. That I think there are moments in our lives where we don't have anything to bring but our heart and our tears, and that's the most beautiful offering. But I say all that to say this, that you're going to have friends who are dealing with things like this. I don't feel like this is just a one-off in my friend group, because it's so massive right now in them. Like, I would say over 90% of them are like struggling with, God, where are you? God, what do I do? God, I can't hear you. Like, I don't feel close to you. Right? And I think what you really have to do as a friend is just sit. You don't have to have the answer. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think you sit with them and you listen to them and you let them bare their heart to you. I think when we talk about bearing our burdens, yes, that completely bear your burdens to God, but also God has surrounded you with people who he has allowed into your life to fight for you in these moments when you can't fight for yourself. they'll be the ones that will. And I've been kind of in this moment of really with God of like, you know what? They're all struggling, but I'll carry whatever they need me to carry until they can pick it back up again. And that's the heart of true friendship. I think the heart of true friendship is my friend is struggling and you go to the secret place and you talk to God and you tell him, hey, they're struggling with this. And so you just begin to intercede and pray and war for them like you never have before. That's true friendship. True friendship doesn't just give advice or be there for the happy moments. It's about the lowest ones. Will you sit with them for as long as it takes? Right? Will you intercede for them for as long as it takes? And will you be the safe place for them? I think a lot of times everybody has advice and opinions, but not a lot of people have people that can be safe and just bear everything to. And not let it leave the room. Not let it leave the room. I think that's a big thing is like people will bear their burdens to people, trusting them, hoping that this is the safest place, and then like all of a sudden it's spread everywhere, right? But there has to be an honor in the friendship of, okay, you're dealing with this, you're struggling with this stays between us and God. I'm going to hold you accountable. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to love you through. I'm going to help you as far as I can. But there will always be a protection of you with our friendship, no matter what you tell me. Because I think real friendship is as much iron sharpens iron, but it's also a protection. You have it when you have David and Jonathan. It's the most beautiful view of friendship, right? Is literally Jonathan's dad is Saul. He doesn't want David to become king. He's trying to kill David. And Jonathan goes to his dad and is like, hey, like trying to figure out the situation, right? Because he's like, there's no way my dad would do that. And then literally has to go to David and like send out the arrow to tell him like, hey, actually this is how it is. Like, protect yourself because my dad's not doing great. Like, that's just the honesty of it. But that's a beautiful friendship of protection. And I think that's what honestly friends need in this moment. As much as we hold each other accountable in different things, I think that when it comes to really hard seasons, when it comes to deserts, the greatest position you can put yourself in the friendship is being the safety, is being the safety net, being the interceder, letting them cry, holding them. One of the big things that I do all the time, which my friends hate, but the Holy Spirit, one of the big things he always asks me to do to people is like, just go give them a hug. And I'm like, and I hate physical touch, so it's really funny to me. So whenever God or the Holy Spirit is like, go give this person a hug, I'm like, I don't really want to do that. But I'll walk over and I'll like hug somebody. And it's just that moment of like, actually the Holy Spirit needed to use me so that they can feel the protection and the warmth and the wrapping of the arms that God has around each and every one of us. I think it's easy to look at people's really hard seasons and judge and go, well, that's just where they're at and that's what they deserve. But I'm going to be honest, like if you're following after Jesus, you're going to go through a desert season. You're going to ask God where he is. I don't know a single person that hasn't gone through a desert season where God's gotten quiet. Hey, I just don't. But I think that there has to be a level of empathy in our hearts for others. A level of empathy towards their pain, a level of empathy of like, because I remember when I walked through it, this is what I was really dealing with at that time, right? I was walking through grief, and I don't know why I feel like there's like a literal hair on my eye. It's weird, but I can't find it. You know what I mean? It's insane. But I was walking through grief and like starting to finally feel okay. And then I got diagnosed with a heart problem that I still have. But I just remember my whole life shifting from me being this ultra athletic person and super healthy. Like always working out, eating really healthy, like, it just didn't make sense that I would have a heart problem. It just really didn't to me, and I had to shut all of that down, and I already was struggling with grief, so that felt like even more of a slap in the face from God, and then it shifted from there to just pain in the midst of my family and things like that, and God got really quiet. I was still going to him. I was still, like, telling him my things, but there was nothing. Like, usually I would go into my secret place and I can, like, tangibly feel the presence of God, but I would go and there would be nothing. And I was ticked. Like, I was like, God, what are you doing right now? What do you think this is? Like, the moment that I need you, this is where you're going to leave me. The moment that, like, I need you to actually give me something. And so I got to this really cynical place in my heart where I really believed that God wasn't good. And it wasn't that God wasn't good. It was that God wasn't good to me. That God was good to everybody else. That God blessed everybody else, but not me. And that was the hardest thing to break off of my heart because it was turning into bitterness. And then I remember one day, the Holy Spirit really urging me to put down all the things that I was using to supplement relationship with the Father, to put it all aside and just sit there. And I remember I sat there and I didn't say anything for a really long time. It was probably like 20 minutes of silence in a dark room, just sitting there, looking at the ceiling, feeling like, yeah, okay, here I am. And then I remember just tears starting to fall down my eyes because it was like this moment of like, where am I? God, like, I thought you would never leave or forsake me. Where are you? And I just began to process. And as I processed, like, it went from me looking at the ceiling to me on my face, to me yelling, to me being really honest in my heart with the Father of, what are you doing? And it was in that moment that I realized, actually, this is where faith is found. This is it. This is where the foundation of my faith is found. It's in these moments where I have to sit here and wrestle with my own spirit to believe that God is still good. To have faith that I will get through this season. To have faith that he is actually the same God in Psalms 23 to me as he is to everybody else. Right? That his rod and his staff, they comfort me. That he goes before me. That he prepares a table for me. I had to believe those things. And what it really did was this, right? I had that really transformative moment, and I believe in this. I believe that the Holy Spirit, there are these amazing presence-filled moments that rock your life, but it's the in-between that shifts you to the next season. It is what you do in that day-to-day that takes that amazing moment, that marking moment in your life, and makes it every day. How does that happen? It starts with your word. And so from there, what I really did was I would open up my Bible every single day. Every day. Whether I was full of faith or full of bitterness, I would open up my Bible every day. And I would sit there. And in my Bible right now, which is so funny, besides it being like, I've had the same Bible since I was 16 years old, and I'm never changing it. But besides there being all this writing and all these things, like, if you look through my Bible and you'll see that I, in this season, was reading Psalms, and then I would read a Psalms, and then I would go to the New Testament, and I would read something from the New Testament, just one chapter. But if you look at, you can see where I was journeying, because you can see the tears. Like, you can see like these like water splashes from where I'm just crying, where I'm like, this is my faith right now. This word is my faith right now. And I watched as God took that season and turned it to good. And I think it's always really hard to understand that when you're walking through really hard seasons, right? I think it's really hard to explain or even help somebody through this season, because it's not something that you're like, these are the simple points you go through when you're going through pain, right? It's a journey for them and God. And that's hard for us to take a step back, but we have to believe that as friends, right, that God is orchestrating something beautiful. And if he needs us to be a part of the plan, he'll tell us. I think one of the things that I realized as I was talking to my friends and people last week about all this stuff was a lot of times I think we try to be God in the midst of people's hard situations. We try to fix it, right? We try to Olivia Pope it, like, I can fix it. I got this. But honestly, what they're really needing in that moment is him. And I can't be God. All I can do is intercede and pray and love them. And if they ask me, I think one of the big things is to not going in with the intention of let me figure this out for you, but going in with this intention of I'm going to sit back and be a good and loving friend, let them get everything out. And if they say to me, how did you get through this season? How would you handle this season? That's when I give my opinion. And there was not a conversation last week that I had where I gave my opinion outright. I sat back, I listened, and I waited for them to ask. And I waited for them to tell me, okay, what would you do? And all I could do is give them my testimony, right? Of this is how I did it. And when it says in Revelation, we shall overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, that's where it comes in, right? Especially during desert seasons for people. When they're going, how did you get through this? How did you handle grief and disappointment and anger with God? How did you handle that? I think a lot of times everybody wants me to have this big spiritual answer, but I'm like, I was yelling in my car. I was just getting it out, guys. And it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect. And one thing Holy Spirit taught me through that season was you wanted to get through this season and you wanted it to be so good and so perfect because you have a heart that burns for me. And I know part of you is feeling so much condemnation and shame because you didn't do this perfectly or you didn't do this the way that you thought it would be done. But it's okay. We got through it and it's okay. And I think understanding the love of the Father in that place is so important for us to know this season's not going to be perfect, but his love's not going to stop abounding again and again and again for me. I might not do this exactly how it's meant to be done, but it's going to be beautiful anyways. Because if we know anything, God can take the ashes and turn it to beauty. Every single time. Every single time. But that's all I got. Next week I'll come with something more prepared, but I really felt in my heart like I needed to talk about what do you do in the desert seasons when your friends are going through literal hell and you're just there, right? And you're like, I want to be so helpful, but I don't know what to do. You just gotta be there. So, I hope you guys have a good week.